Hey guys, in this video I'm going to go over the best settings for Siege if you're a new player or you're just looking to improve. So don't want to waste anyone's time, let's just get into it. There's four main settings: gameplay, audio, video, controls. I'm going to go over every single setting. First thing, squad privacy. I'm actually going to set this to invite only, because if I set it to open to friends, that means my friends can just randomly join my friends list. Invite only makes it so I have to invite someone for them to join my squad. Going into matchmaking preferences. Quick match, I don't really care, I don't play it much, so I'm just going to turn everything on. But in Terrorist Hunt, I use Terrorist Hunt as a warm-up for my aim before ranked, and because of that, I only turn on the classic mode, which is just the basically deathmatch of Terrorist Hunt. I don't have to extract or protect the hostage. I turn everything else off, and I also only turn on the map house, so I turn every other map off. That way, every time I go into a Terrorist Hunt, it's just a good, because house is the smallest map, it's the best way to warm up your aim. Interface preferences is personal preference. I prefer having everything on, but some people prefer turning your points on or off, which is basically when you get an enemy it shows points. I just turned it to off, so it'll only show up in the kill feed. And some people prefer it like that just because it's less distracting. And now when I kill someone, I get the points for it. And also, like, if you're playing Vigil and you use your ability, you get points if you evade the drones, so that can be helpful to know. Or if you're playing Legion or Capcan or Frost, you can get points. So I definitely recommend turning points off, or turning points on, especially if you're just starting out at the game. Everything else you're going to want to leave on just because it helps you and there's no reason not to turn it off. I just hopped into a Terrorist Hunt match to show you guys some of the settings. Might be helpful to actually show. This next setting, ping, I have it on, and that's basically this thing. Your teammates can see it. It's like a pointer on the map. There's no reason to not turn it off. It's just helpful. Going on to display game info, that like it's your ping and your FPS. And on console, it really doesn't matter unless you have really bad internet and you want to see if your internet's shooting up or something. I just have it off because it's a distraction and my internet's fine, because the FPS on console is pretty standard. Cycle inside camera groups. Now this is personal preference, but I prefer it on, and basically that makes it so, let's say I'm defending and I have both regular cams and Valkyrie cams. If I have cycle inside camera groups on, once I get to the end of the Valkyrie cams, it'll cycle back to the first Valkyrie cam. Whereas if I have it off, it'll completely cycle to the very first available camera. I prefer to have it on, but you can experiment and do whatever you like best. Going to audio settings, I prefer to have subtitles on, but this is just personal preference to you. You're going to want your master volume to be 100 just because you want the game audio to be as loud as possible. You can turn your music volume down just because it's not as important, but everything else you're going to want full range. The dynamic range is just your setup. Usually people have it on hi-fi, but if for some reason you don't have a headset or something, you're going to want to set it to TV. Voice chat volume, anywhere from like 80 to and up is fine. It doesn't really matter too much, just your volume level. Going into video, always turn VSync off, because that just causes tearing. It's just not a help, just turn it off. Brightness, anywhere from like 60 to 70 is good. It's really not that important, just like I prefer to have mine on 65, it's just a good balance. Going into controls, always disable look inversion. There's not really a point to it unless you're used to it. And vibration, personal preference. I just like it enabled, but there's a lot of people who just turn it off just because there's no real point to it. Your sensitivity, this is a big one, but it just comes down to personal preference. Just keep playing with it. There's usually two types, so you can either have a more balanced vertical and horizontal like I have, or some people like really high horizontals and really low ADS sensitivity, but I prefer to keep mine around 46, 60, and then like 38 to 40 on ADS. You're either going to want to set your sensitivity really high and then keep your ADS speed really low, or what I do, which is basically like a average, like these are always around 50 and then these are around 40. It's like a medium sensitivity overall, but you're not going to want to set these low. Like my sensitivity is probably the lower end of what's good. Your dead zones, you're going to always want to set to 5, which is the lowest possible, unless for some reason your controller is like broken, where like if you aren't moving it, your stick is like drifting your aim around, you're going to want to set this up. But if you have a normal controller, always set these as low as possible. Controller rotation, I set mine on classic, which basically looks like this. It's like a fixed speed of rotation and everything. If I set mine to the other one, if I go to the controls and updated, it takes like time for it to build up. So it's better for, obviously I'm not used to it, but it's better for small moves, while classic is better for flicks. But I prefer to have it on classic just because I'm more used to classic, and yeah. Aim assist, always disable it. It's only going to be enabled in terrorist on anyway, and considering I use it for a warm-up, there's no point in enabling it and giving me an advantage when that's not going to help me warm up my aim for ranked. ADS speed, that's just your sensitivity while you're aiming down the scope. I prefer to keep mine on like 38, but it's just personal preference. Find the experiment and find the sensitivity that works for you. Gadget and drone deployment, you're going to want to put on advanced. Drone deployment basically means that when I throw a drone, I don't immediately go into it. I have to tap down on the D-pad to actually get into it. But if I go and I set that to the not advanced, to standard, when I throw a drone, I'm immediately locked into the camera animation. And that's bad because you never want to be locked into an animation. Because obviously if someone's like there and you see it the last second, there's nothing you can do about it, you're dead. Same thing with gadget, that's basically standard will lock you into the animation of doing it, while with advanced you're able to deploy your gadget and then cancel the gadget animation. There's no disadvantage to it. Controller layout, I just play on default. If you prefer the other ones, like if you shoot with your other trigger, then just do that, but for the most part, you're just going to want this on default. And yeah, those are all the settings in Siege to help you get started and help you improve. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful.